This is Federalist 25, Part 1. If you remember, I said Federalist 23 through 29 is going to be talking about the national defense, the common defense for all the states. Here he's continuing with what he was saying in Federalist 24, and he wants to bring to the people's attention that we don't need to have 13 armies. You don't want to have 13 military establishments for 13 different states. You just have to have one good one for the whole country. And also, he's reminding him that they do need a professional army, small one, but they do need a professional army, or what they would call the standing army, so that they won't be surprised. A surprise attack might happen. And then what are they going to do? It's going to be hard to get those militias ready to fight back. So keep that in mind as we read this paper. It may perhaps be urged that the objects enumerated in the preceding number ought to be provided for by the state governments under the direction of the Union. But this would be in reality an inversion of the primary principle of our political association, as it would in practice transfer the care of the common defense from the federal head to the individual members, a project oppressive to some states, dangerous to all, and baneful to the Confederacy. So why should we transfer the responsibility of having one solid and good defense establishment for the whole Union to all the 13 states? It just doesn't make sense. The territories of Britain, Spain, and that of Indian nations in our neighborhood do not border on particular states, but encircle the Union from Maine to Georgia. Remember from the last Federalist, he says we are surrounded either by the Spanish on the south, by the British on the north, northwest, and then by Native Americans all around the other areas. So he says some states might not be affected by this as some of the other states because of location. The danger, though in different degrees, is therefore common, and the means of guarding against it ought in like manner to be the objects of common councils and of a common treasury. It happens that some states, from local situation, are more directly exposed. New York is of this class. Upon the plan of separate provisions, New York would have to sustain the whole weight of the establishments requisite to her immediate safety and to the immediate and ultimate protection of her neighbors. This would neither be equitable as it respected New York, nor safe as it respected the other states. The states to whose lot it might fall to support the necessary establishments would be as little able as willing for a considerable time to come to bear the burden of competent provisions. So he's reminding that, like the state of New York is exposed from the Atlantic, and also the British are here and around this side, and then they have Native Americans over here. So he says we got to be careful, because if we don't have a union defense system, a union army, then state like us, that people can attack us from the ocean by the Navy, and also we are exposed here, they can attack us from here, it will be too burdensome for us. It would cost a lot. We will have to put a lot of people into militia service if we go alone, if we do it by ourselves. So he says it doesn't make sense. Any way you look at it, it does not make sense. The security of all would thus be subjected to the parsimony, improvidence, or inability of a part. If the resources of such part becoming more abundant and extensive, its provisions should be proportionally enlarged, the other states would quickly take the alarm at seeing the whole military force of the Union in the hands of 2 or 3 of its members, and those probably amongst the most powerful. They would each choose to have some counterpoise, and pretenses could easily be contrived. In this situation, military establishments, nourished by mutual jealousy, would be apt to swell beyond their natural or proper size. And being at the separate disposal of the members, they would be engines for the abridgment or demolition of the national authority. So he says, look, if we start having our own army and navy, and one of the other big states like Virginia or Pennsylvania or Massachusetts, they have their own big army and navy, then all these other states, some of these other states will be jealous and distrustful. Jealous in a sense that they will be distrusting, so they will have to raise big armies and spend a lot of money, a lot of time, and that we know is going to eventually create problems. So why don't we just spend a little money and have one common defense, one national military for the whole country, instead of dividing ourselves and raising armies for every state or every confederacy that might be made of the states. So he says, any way you look at it, you'll be wasting money, time, and in the long run, lives of your people. Okay, the next paragraph says, reasons have been already given to induce a supposition that the state governments will too naturally be prone to a rivalship with that of the Union, the foundation of which will be the love of power, and that in any contest between the federal head and one of its members, the people will be most apt to unite with their local government. If in addition to this immense advantage, the ambition of the members should be stimulated by the separate and independent possession of military forces, it would afford too strong a temptation and too great facility to them to make enterprises upon, and finally to subvert the constitutional authority of the Union. On the other hand, the liberty of the people would be less safe in this state of things than in that which left the national forces in the hands of the national government. As far as an army may be considered as a dangerous weapon of power, it had better be in those hands of which the people are most likely to be jealous than in those of which they are least likely to be jealous. For it is a truth which the experience of all ages has attested, that the people are commonly most in danger when the means of injuring their rights are in the possession of those of whom they entertain the least suspicion. And he brings up another good point. He says, look, if we have an army for each one of the states, the chances are, because people are going to trust the state army more than the national army, because of that sense of trust, they are not watchful. They are not jealous for their liberty. They are not watchful that the people in the state army might abuse their power. Because remember, Publius, the writers of the Federalist have a very realistic take on history. They say anybody that you give them power, there's a good chance that they will abuse it. So don't trust anybody with power. So he says, even if it's the people who are from your own state, and you have a state army, when you give them power, because you think, well, they'll be safe, you won't be watchful, you won't be as careful, and then who knows? They might abuse the power, take away your rights, whereas if you if you have a national army, then you will be even more careful about what that national army does. So it's actually to your advantage. You would be very monitoring them much. You would make sure they do not overstep their boundary. So again, another realistic look at things by Publius, Hamilton, Madison, and Jay. Anybody with power cannot be trusted. That's why in this new system, in this new constitution, you have checks and balances, separation of powers, judicial independence. You have a Republican form of government where you know in known intervals, at set times, you will have elections, and they can't change that.